So I don't see Emma's video on my screen.
Oh, I've got it on my screen.
I see you, James, but I don't see Emma.
Take it on gallery view.
Is that a Zoom? Is that a Zoom thing? Is
Yeah.
that a Zoom thing? Maybe that's me.
I think it might be, yeah.
Switch from speaker view to
So,
gallery view.
I see. Okay. That's it. Hi guys. I think we're live. So
Hey.
thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Peter Petro, and this is a brand new live stream that has been an adventure in the making. We're really glad to have it out there and kind of kick it off the way we're doing it. I want to just do a little bit of brief introduction about what this is about and what we're trying to do with it, and then I'm really, really excited to introduce my two guests today. So the last few weeks have been really, really strange for the entire globe, and basically about 4 weeks ago, I started on an adventure to try and figure out, what the music industry in particular could do about it. Obviously, live streaming was something that people were really looking into, and I ended up writing some things for music business registry that were sort of meant to be a kind of like a reference for music creators right now, and we're going to continue to add to it every month. The first sort of installment is something that we're going to post in the notes. It's free for everybody. That section is going to remain free. And the two main things that I looked at for this first round were, what are the companies that are out there doing things, the platforms, the services that people can start to plug into, and then who are like the best in the field that I can possibly get access to try and learn from as fast as possible, but like from the people who really understand and are doing it really well. And I was fortunate that I got my two first choices. And so, I'm really, really excited to be able to introduce you guys to two incredible talents in the live streaming world. You may not have heard of them before, but for my money, Emma is the best creator in the live stream space. She's very authentic and very sincere about what she's giving to the audience, and she's just incredibly talented. So I want to introduce both Emma and her producer, James. Emma, let me let you just sort of maybe give folks a little bit of background on, the last, you started as an artist, a number of years ago, but what has the last sort of 4 or 5 years been like for you as far as learning and getting into live streaming, and what was that adventure like the last 4 or 5 years?
So in the beginning, we kind of initially set out to use live streaming to gain a bit more exposure online, to reach new people. We were touring, myself and James, we were touring around the UK at the time. We were doing a 2-month UK kind of school tour, and we were sleeping in the back of the van and just doing all of that kind of graft and, pouring our money into just traditionally touring for the first time as an artist. And it was a lot to deal with back then. We were both at university, and we were trying to kind of make ends meet. And then one night we went live in the back of the tour bus, just an acoustic kind of hangout with people after the show one day, just to see what would happen. And in that one live stream, we had more interaction, more engagement, more merch sold than we had with us on the tour in that 1 hour window than compared to like a week of touring. So I think in that moment we both realized that, that was like 6 or 7 years ago now, we both realized that there was definitely something to live streaming in regards to pursuing it as a non-traditional avenue as an artist. And once, we kind of did that first broadcast, it was just in my head then. I just wanted to keep doing it and keep experimenting. And we did some really early broadcasts with the live band, and the broadcasts evolved in terms of the types of content that I would put out. So I very quickly, and I'm sure this is something we'll talk about, but I very quickly learned that the kind of music content that you can share on live streaming is really important, but also personality-driven content as well. So over the last 6 or 7 years, it's been a huge roller coaster. It's opened up so many opportunities for me as an independent artist, particularly over in the US. The predominant platform that I use is YouNow, and their audience is mainly in the US. So a lot of my kind of traffic started to become, from the States, and so it's kind of evolved over the years and has enabled us to do so many different things. And it's been so exciting as well to just do something completely different, and also, encourage artists to pursue a similar path.
That's amazing, and it's also amazing that you were doing it 6 or 7 years ago, and it was that explosive. I mean, I think so many people in the music space are kind of, because of what we're going through, they sort of looked at this seriously for the first time in the last month. And you were doing this 6 or 7 years ago when most people probably had no idea it was happening, and to have it be that explosive is amazing. I also want to introduce James Plester. James, you're the sort of the engineering and production backbone behind Emma McGann. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. I do everything from basically everything behind the scenes. So I'm basically not the pretty face.
You are.
We when we first started doing it, obviously it was quite a while ago. Obviously, like 6-7 years ago, and now there's kind of definite paths as a live streamer. But back then, it was just like it was the Wild West. There was no set path. No one really knew how to do it. When we first started, we didn't realize you could monetize it. It was only maybe 6 months down the line from there, we were originally doing it because we were monetizing via merch sales, which was making us more money than touring, and there was no overheads. And back then, everybody was basically on their phone in their bedroom. So we put good production into the live videos, and that's what really made Emma stand out in the early days and grow that audience very early. Was that the production level was just really good. So when anyone tuned in, it wasn't just someone in their bedroom playing guitar on the phone. It was this is actually like a properly made set and everything in place. That's kind of how we started, and a lot of the tech we've kind of developed over the years for it has kind of just been out of trial and error because, like I say, there wasn't really a set path back then. So we just tried different things and figured out what worked and what didn't.
Yep. So that kind of teased us off really nicely. We're going to be doing a number of these live streams with you guys, and I wanted to make this one more or less about sort of the nuts and bolts of getting what you just said to happen. In other words, there's an engineering component, there's a production value component to this that I think is sort of like the first thing that we want to sort of explore. And so, the way you said that was really, I think, pertinent because especially at that time, the expectation was it was just happening in your bedroom, and so it doesn't need to be high fidelity, it doesn't need to be polished, and you were already at that point coming in with the notion that actually no, it does, because that's a more valuable experience, but also I think to Emma's point, we want to do something different. We want to stand out. Live streaming was stand out enough, but then on top of that, wow, this is actually something that's well done, right? So I think, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's very strange because I would say what we were doing 4 years ago, now when you go on platforms like Twitch and you look at the level of how good the quality of broadcasters are, that's a standard now. What we were experimenting with maybe 4 years ago, now that is, that's the kind of the base level. Some of the things you can do now with platform integrations and bots and all these crazy things you can actually, do to make your stream even more interactive for viewers. Is just incredible. Some of the things you can actually make happen now compared to back when we used to do it. I'd be like pulling bits of code out of the website and trying to hack bits together to make things happen when someone says something in the chat, and all these kind of weird little loopholes we'd be finding, and all that now is really documented and in place. So it makes it a lot easier now for new broadcasters coming in to get that quality. That I feel, it is easier to get a high quality broadcast now compared to, say 4 or 5 years ago.
Right, but also the bar is higher. The standard has gone up along with all of that support documentation, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So here's what I thought would be interesting to do with this, right? So I sort of feel like there's, if you look at the levels of production value, let's call it production value. I think for a lot of people that are getting started in live streaming, there's sort of a 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0. Let's assume you guys are 3.0. In other words, that's like sort of a pretty high tier, high bar, and that's great. And I think part of what intimidates people right now is, oh man, I should have bots going, I should have stream elements going, and they sort of lean back. So what I'd like to hear from you guys is, from a production value standpoint, both as an artist and as a kind of engineer producer, what does 1.0 look like? And let's define it as like, let's say someone's got a week and they've got maybe, $1,000. They've got $1,000. They don't have a lot of resources, but they've got, whatever would be the sort of operational standard to get something working and sort of 1.0. What does 1.0 look like? And how you've experienced, when did you hit 1.0 and sort of what did it look like, if that makes sense? Emma, do you want to start first? Like, as the artist, what does it feel like, or was there a moment where you're like, okay, we've sort of reached a point? Maybe it was that first one. What was the setup like, and what sort of snapped together?
So I think it kind of snapped together for us in terms of we began to understand what was important in that kind of space when we did a kind of Q&A acoustic live stream, and it was probably maybe 2-3 weeks after, around the same time when we first got started. And in that moment, I kind of understood the importance of the audio, like straight off. I was sat there performing on an acoustic guitar, and because James had mic'd it up beautifully, like the comments were reflected that. And I think seeing that feedback instantly from people in that moment that weren't used to having a live acoustic guitar feed for a live stream back then, number one, we just knew that audio was the main focus. And I think one of our aims back then, our first kind of port of call, was to just really get some beautiful equipment as much as we could afford. And we actually used a lot of stuff that we originally had with the band. So I think in terms of like 1.0 for people getting started, that's going to change and be determined by if you're working on your own, or you have an engineer or somebody who's techie that can help you out with it. But I think as a musician, audio, of course, is definitely, I would say, like more important at first than the visuals. You can always look to upgrade your camera as you evolve into it. But if you can invest in a better sound card, maybe a better mic in the first instance, and get your head around maybe Ableton Live or however you're mixing your audio for your live stream, I think that, I would say, is a good first window to kind of jump through if you're just getting started, for sure.
And for that acoustic guitar, was both the acoustic guitar and the vocals going into the same mic? Did you have two separate mics? Did you have the acoustic guitar amplified and going offset? Do you remember how that was happening in the beginning?
Yeah, so we had like two separate mics. So one probably back then a 58, and then a 57 on the guitar. Back then, so yeah, they were mixed independently. Yeah, yep. As far as I remember.
James, what's your impression of 1.0, and like what did it look like back then? Do you remember?
I mean, back then it was kind of, we cobbled together what we could find. I think now 1.0 is the technology is so cheap now. You can get such good technology for so cheap compared to even 2 years ago. A decent Logitech webcam is about £80, and that can make you 4K video. You may not get the contrast and the video. The USB can only send so much data, so you're only going to get such good quality. Even if it's a 4K camera, it's not going to have the full width of what it can capture. But you can get such a great looking broadcast out of webcams. and they're cheap and they're easy because you just plug them straight into your laptop. You can probably have, depending on what your PC or your Mac is, you can have 2 or 3 connected if you wanted a multi-cam setup, even from a basic point of view. But even if we just said 1.0 is a single camera and it's a webcam, and from an audio point of view, I feel like a lot of bands who are out there already own a lot of equipment, like Emma said, like we did at the time. You know, you own the microphones because you probably play gigs. You own an analog mixer. And a lot of mixers nowadays have a USB output. So, you know, you buy like even a cheaper Behringer console will have, you know, your 4-channel XLRs in, and it'll have a USB out, and that USB out is sending the clean audio. You kind of have to treat live streaming like a live performance. So imagine it's the same thing as doing a gig. You do the sound the same. The only difference is you don't have to worry about acoustics of a room because nothing can feed back because it's obviously all computer based. It's all, you know, you may have to sort some monitoring out for yourself or the band. That's maybe where you have, you know, more issues, but from a basic understanding point of view, you know, a microphone plugged into an analog desk, or and then, you know, straight out of that into a sound card, even just a microphone input on the side of a PC from your analog desk. It's not the cleanest way to do it, but it will still be better audio than the webcam microphone.
Yeah.
The webcam microphones are just then the diaphragm of the microphone isn't big enough to capture it. So what you'll find is a lot of people have acoustic guitar and sing, and it will just distort. It'll be clipping, and it will just sound horrible. If you just go down the webcam route. And I think once you get that point where you separate the audio and the video into 2 individual kind of components, that's kind of the beginning, I think, of when you've got a good quality stream and it hasn't really cost you much. I mean, I think if I had to put together a very basic stream now and get good quality audio, I could probably do it for £300.
And what would you spend? You'd spend $80 on the webcam and then the rest on the audio.
Yeah, rest on the audio, and I'd get I'd look for a decent microphone in that kind of area, like Aston or like the lower end brands that is still.
Condenser.
The thing is, it's got a condenser, because the thing is a condenser is going to pick up all that high frequency range that you don't use them live because you have to worry about the feeding back, and they sound so great. Even the cheaper microphones, it's all the main difference between higher end microphones and cheaper end microphones is that they're more balanced EQ on the higher end, so they're flatter microphones, so you don't have to do as much work to make them sound like the same as it actually is. If I'm singing into the microphone, a cheaper microphone is going to colour the sound, whereas a more expensive microphone is going to sound more like me actually singing it. You can adjust things on the console. This is going a bit more technical here to make it similar to sounding like a better microphone, but just from a pure basic point of view, even if you had an SM58, in fact, Emma's using for the broadcast we're doing, she's using a dynamic 57A, because it's just what she uses live, and it works really well. The way the pattern we have on that microphone, what we use, so it kind of doesn't matter as long as you have a microphone of at least some standard quality.
How critical is monitoring? In other words, even for 1.0, do you, Emma, maybe you can chime in here too, like how important is it to have a functional / decent in-ear monitor to be able to know what's going on and be able to be engaged as an artist?
I mean, for me, I like to hear what the audience hears, so I always wear in-ear monitors. Like the ones I'm wearing now are the ones that I wear both on stage and also when we do the live streams, and they're actually very affordable in-ears just from Amazon. They're called ZSTs, I believe. Really affordable, and in terms of clarity, like the price, it's fantastic, really, really good, and I always recommend these to streamers.
How much
of course,
do they
you can
run?
go a step
Do you remember?
up. 25 pounds, I think, something like that. So really low end in terms of price, but great clarity. And I'm sure James would agree with that. I mean, he's used them as well. But I mean, if you wanted to go a step up, you could always look at Ultimate Ears, or actually get some fitted in-ear molds as well, especially if you're performing live a lot, and you probably have them if you perform live a lot anyway. So yeah, in-ear monitoring is, well, as an artist, really important in the live streaming space as well for me.
What's 2.0? So 1.0, from what I hear, is you could probably do it for $300 ish. 75% of your budget should be making sure that the audio sounds as good as it could possibly sound, and shoot for mentally that this should be as good as a live show, right? And you need some in-ear monitors. You need some decent, SM57s, SM58, maybe a less expensive condenser or whatever you guys are using with the band. A decent mixer board of some kind. Analog is best, and then USB into PC or Mac, and you're kind of good for 1.0. What does 2.0 look like, James? What is when it's time to graduate? What is the if you're consulting a band? By the way, you guys Emma, are you kind of consulting a little bit now and helping artists and folks figure this stuff out?
Yeah, I've been doing quite a lot of mentoring, especially over the last 4 weeks or so, to just help artists get started. Yeah.
Great. So and for anyone watching, I'm trying to as elegantly as possible sort of showcase as much of what they do, but you guys really need to watch Emma perform. And what I really want to also unpack in some of these later live streams is that it goes way beyond just music and performance in the traditional sense. There's so much going on that Emma's really good at, and I would encourage everyone here to just watch and take in what's going on creatively and with viewers and everything else. But we're just trying to kind of focus on how to get the car started today. So sorry, James, what's 2.0 look like, and what's a budget look like, and like how do you get that up and running, you think?
So I think when 2.0 for us would have been when we started having real cameras. So we kind of graduated from the webcam point of view, and we started actually using real cameras. And at the time we invested in a camera that we were using for shooting our music videos. So I basically figured out that I could pull the live stream of that camera and run it straight into the computer using a capture card. Back then capture cards were very expensive. I mean, now a HDMI capture card is probably £150. The camera you need from there, I mean, there's so many options when it comes to cameras. It's interesting in the market because there aren't really that many cameras aimed specifically at live streaming. And the difficulty you find with a commercial camera, and I'd say this is something you only really get by doing it. When you pull a live stream off a camera, it has overlays. So it'll have the record button, side symbol, which you don't want in your live stream. And the problem with a lot of commercial grade cameras is they have that on the HDMI output. So when you try to capture that and use that, you have this great camera with a great lens which picks everything up, but then you have this big record button, all the time, or how much space you've got left on your live stream which you don't want. So it's quite difficult to find cameras that on a lower, I say a lower end, like a consumer end. So when you're not talking 10 grand and above. And one that's really good is Blackmagic. So we actually have a Blackmagic cinema camera, which is the main camera Emma uses. We actually use an older version, 2.5K, but you can get them now in 4K. And those kind of cameras are ranging about. They do ones that are just for live streaming, so they don't actually record on the camera, and it has what's called an SDI out, which you plug into a capture card. And then the moment you do that, you're getting this perfect image, from your camera, and that goes straight into your computer. I think that's the moment at which, from an image point of view, you go from. It's the difference between a webcam is, it will focus everything in the room, but with when I can put a lens on, I can get the artist up close and I can focus the artist and blur the background a little bit. And those are the kind of things that when you look at it, you go, oh wow, I can see the difference between this is just a webcam and it's in a room to now we're looking at something and I can really see the detail of the artist, and there's all these little intricate things in the background. They're all being picked up. The Blackmagic do a streaming camera. I mean, you're talking, even if you're looking on eBay, you're talking probably £500 to £1,000 for a decent camera that can do that. The problem is that once you find your camera that can have a clean HDMI output or a clean SDI output, you then have to worry about overheating, because a lot of these cameras aren't designed to be on for hours and hours, because they're designed to be used in shoots, or they're not designed to be.
Nodding your head.
So when we first started,
I never expected that.
Yeah, when we first started, we had a DSLR, a Canon.
That sounds like a nice camera.
500.
It's like a Rebel TI.
Rebel TI in the US.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what we had when we first started, and I managed to get a clean HDMI out of it. But the problem was that after 12 minutes, the camera would just fail because wasn't designed to be on for that long. So I actually had a little fan mounted on the back of the camera to keep it cool enough. But
like a separate fan,
separate fan just sat there. So we had to keep that away from the microphone, and so that's the kind of the difficulties from a consumer end. When you're talking 2.0, I think before you start spending, crazy money. And even, you know, talking about going higher, there's a point at which, with most things, you know, the value for what you spend, you know, the quality extra you get for what you spend starts to plateau off quite a lot. And I think with a lot of those cameras from a live streaming point of view, once you're going over that £2,000 mark, you are obviously going to get better quality the higher you go, but there's better things you can invest in, like lighting. So good lighting.
So quick question while we're still on that topic. So Goda, MX Goda is asking, on the camera models, you just kind of ripped through a little bit. It sounds like you guys are using an older model that's 2.5K and now they're more 4K, but like, what would be some models that you would say, like, for that 2.0, this is a good one, this is a good one? Can you go through those model numbers again?
Yeah, I mean, anything in the Blackmagic range that's the cinema camera, which I think they do a 4K version now.
Well, you know what, we can kind of like post this later too, but
yeah, the cinema, they do a pocket camera, pocket 4K camera, but I don't know. I haven't personally tested it on what the output is from that, like the output you can get from the HDMI, because you find with most cameras they will have a you know, at least even if it's a 4K camera, they'll have at least a 4K HDMI out, because on set, you know, the person controlling the video needs to be able to take that image and blow it onto a big screen, so when they're focusing they can see it. Most cameras have that high quality HDMI coming out. It's whether obviously, like I say, you know, it's got this overlays on it and you can turn that off. There's a point, I think, for GoPros you can do the same thing from version, I think version 3, they started allowing you to take the SDI off, overlays.
So how does that work? And then I want to ask Emma what 2.0 looks like and sounds like and feels like. When you've got basically almost two images that the camera's capturing, the original screen image that the camera is functioning with, and then a separate one that's being sent through the USB or the HDMI or whatever, is that something that you're managing within the camera environment? Are you opening up a piece of software in your computer environment?
So, I'll let you handle this, Emma.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, so I was just going to talk about in terms of like the color grading. So actually treating the image. Obviously, when we shoot with the Blackmagic, it's a raw image, so we want to treat that afterwards, so we can, you know, bring out the colors of whatever we're trying to, you know, the grade that we want to achieve. And you know, you've really got some room there to go cinematic or like get colorful, or you know, so the software we use is DaVinci Resolve, and that piece of software actually comes with Blackmagic cinema cameras, I believe. And then in terms of, you know, programs like OBS that you might be using to you know, as a kind of broadcasting software from a production point of view, before, you know, you send out to Twitch or whatever, you know, OBS also has a bunch of plugins that you can use inside of OBS, so you're not opening lots of different, you know, software on your PC, especially if your graphics card, you know, can't handle the processing. If you know, OBS also have some really great plugins available that you can just use there to make things simpler too.
Yeah, it sounds like OBS is this go-to. It's free. It's what is it? An open source broadcast system.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the pipes. I mean, it's the way I understand it is the camera's capturing the raw audio. OBS is basically sort of producing that, audio and video I should say. And then OBS is kind of capturing it, processing it, and encoding it, if that's true. And then you know, if it's on Twitch or YouNow or whatever, that's broadcasting it. That's kind of the video signal chain for kindergartners, right?
Yeah, it's. I was just going to say, Emma mentioned DaVinci Resolve Live. I would say that's more level 3.0, because that's we're using that, and it's not meant to be used live, as in like for a live broadcast. It's not.
Are you using it real time? Are you using it after real time?
Yeah, well, there's a latency of about 400 milliseconds to do it. It's very complicated to do it because I have to have multiple video cards, and I have to basically bring the camera in, send it out, bring it back in again.
And what are
so
you?
it might be,
But
it might be easier from like a.
Sorry, there's like a 3-second delay. So, James, when you're driving that in the middle of a show, what are you accomplishing, and what are you actually? Is it like you're trying to sort of compensate for focusing issues, or you're trying to sort of bring out the colors and things? What is exactly that you're kind of doing when you're driving that?
So a lot of that will be preset, so I won't be actually running it live.
Okay.
The way I have kind of Emma's set up is that it's just you go into the room, you press the on button, and everything's ready. You know, there's no messing about. You don't need to set everything up. And I think from a streamer's point of view, when you're doing, you know, a number of streams every day, or you're streaming every day, the last thing you want to do is go, oh, I've got to set all this up. So I think having a dedicated space and being able to leave that all in place where you know it's right. I use DaVinci Resolve live because I can do things like I can pick an individual color real time and it will track that color, and then I can make that color brighter or darker. So for example, you know, if I could take Emma's hair, I could take the red and the blue streaks and I could pinpoint them in real time. The software will track that hair, and then I can make it more red than it is in real life on the broadcast. That's a little bit more advanced, but I think that, you know, if you look at something like OBS, even now, and you look at the plugins that you can get for OBS, you know, some of them are paid for, but a lot of them are free. I mean, you're getting to the point now with OBS where you can pretty much handle everything. There are alternatives to OBS, but they're kind of all paid for. vMix is one Australian software, which we actually used to use for years because vMix, the big difference between OBS and vMix until OBS brought a plugin out was you now, even now you can send a stream key and you can go by OBS. That never used to be the case. It used to be flash based. So you basically had to send a webcam input to you now. Now the problem is, so what I did with vMix is my camera would go into vMix and then I would do my color grading in vMix, make the camera look great. And then vMix would make a virtual webcam. So the computer would think there's a webcam, but what it is, it's the output of vMix. And then I'd send that to you now, and then that would be, you know, how I could get a much higher quality video. But OBS has that built in now, and it's free software. There's just so much. I think that you know, especially from a video point of view, OBS it's a bit of software that's worth learning because it's so easy to pick up.
Totally. Yeah, and you know what? There's so many resources just on YouTube. I mean, you could probably teach yourself like the basics of OBS in a few hours, just in an afternoon. There's loads of resources online, and like from that kind of 2.0 perspective, I think in terms of like that visual, like upgrading that, OBS is a great option as opposed to DaVinci Resolve for sure.
Yeah, so, I think. I just wanted to give Emma a chance to talk about 2.0 and 3.0 because we've got about 10 minutes left. So this went a lot faster. Everyone always, when you read about live streams, it always says, "Don't worry, you have to go for 2 hours, but it goes really fast." And I'm like, it's not going to go fast. It's gone really fast. So Emma, from an artist perspective now again, what does 2.0 look and feel like? How do you get the artist side feeling like the sound is working, the look is working, and you're able to, because you're also doing some level of engagement too. So I don't know if we'll have bandwidth to talk a lot about that, but balancing, it's like being like a DJ or a drummer or something. Like you're watching the screen, you're performing, you're going through, you're adapting. So 2.0 and 3.0 as an artist, what do you think that kind of looks like?
I think 2.0 probably looks like, you know, you yourself as an artist getting comfortable with the tech you already have, and you know, almost leaning into the performance side of things a little bit more. I mean, I would say like 3.0 is a kind of roundup of all of those plugged together. But in terms of like from like the middle shelf perspective, I feel like getting used to, I mean, especially if you're the broadcaster and you're just handling everything, it can be a little bit overwhelming, you know, if you haven't pre-programmed certain scenes in OBS, or you haven't, or you have like lights in the background that do different things. To manage that and also have a guitar in your hand or also be singing can be a lot. So I think maybe 2.0 is just deciding like what works for you, what's comfortable for you, and you know, maybe exploring more options for like in-ear monitoring. I think that's really important. You know, hearing what the audience hears should, you know, I think every broadcaster should have that. It kind of makes sense. I don't think there's been a broadcast where I've sat with my in-ears out. It would just feel weird to me, just hearing myself in the room.
Right.
So yeah, that's what it looks and feels like to me.
So something that occurred to me yesterday when I was watching, and you've been performing from a sort of a virtual forest.
Yeah.
right? Which is where you are right now. What is the name of the sort of environment that you've created?
So this is the Neon Jungle.
The Neon Jungle.
The Neon Jungle, yeah.
So I was watching you yesterday in the Neon Jungle, and you have this really gorgeous Gretsch guitar, and a lot of the songwriting and performing and sort of whether it's your own originals, and you're getting tons of requests on your originals, and I really want to, there's so many things I want to talk about so many great things that are happening, and again, you guys need to just watch Emma perform and watch this team basically perform together. But there was one moment where you basically switched guitars, and it sounded to me that the Gretsch must have been amplified very delicately and been mic'd off camera, because it sounded, I could hear both the strumming and I could hear a tone. And then when you went to the Taylor,
yeah,
whatever that, you have a really, really beautiful guitar. It sounds great. And you just used the mic, is it the TLM 103? Is that what you're using? And you had the mic miking both. So again, I don't know if that's an accurate description, but you were able to pull things like that off seamlessly that are actually pretty complex to make sound good. So how did you do that, and how how did you make that work?
I mean, for me, so the Gretsch, you were probably hit because obviously the Neumann, the condenser mic, you're probably picking up a lot of the strings as I'm playing acoustically in the room, as well as we use a plugin inside of Ableton called Amplitude. That's what we use for my guitar tones when I'm live. But in terms of switching that to acoustic, it's purely like a personal preference, really, in terms of. That guitar just sounds so beautiful acoustically through that Neumann, and you know we could plug it in and stuff, but I don't know, with the pickup in that guitar sounds great as well, but that Neumann just picks up the tone of that guitar so beautifully. So I find myself kind of almost balancing the mic in that moment when I do want to pick up the acoustic, in between the vocal and in between the fretboard and the sound hole and the guitar, so they can hear everything. But yeah, that's purely like a personal preference. I just love how that guitar sounds acoustically.
Yeah, it sounds really good.
If I can just say one thing, I think when we're going from 2.0 to 3.0 is when we start treating the performance like I would a studio. So we use Ableton Live, and I use all the plugins I use in the studio real time. So I have a computer that can handle that. But one of the things, talking of getting that acoustic out, and the reason we can do that is that the computer is out of the room. There's no computer noise in that room. So when you go in there, it's totally silent. So I can compress that microphone enough so that you can get both things at the same volume coming through, which you wouldn't normally be able to do if you have a loud laptop in front of you or you have a loud computer. So all of those things are taken out of the room, because I'm treating it like a studio. That room is got to be totally silent, and then from there we can adjust things as we need to. There are also things.
Are you treating the room?
So the room's treated. Well? Yeah, the room's also acoustically treated, and there are things that are going on that I've listened to. What the compression. When you live stream, it gets turned into AAC or MP3, and it gets broadcast over the internet, whatever quality. Yeah. And when it comes out at the other end, there are things that happen to that signal. So I will do things before the signal goes to the MP3 to try and compensate for the loss of what will happen once it goes in, if that makes sense. So there are things that an MP3 will convert into MP3 will do to an audio
kind of mastering
file.
it.
Yeah, effectively, yeah. It's like mastering live. So it's mixing and mastering live, but it is all automated. So, but that it just means that for Emma, it's just like you just pick the guitar up and play, and it just sounds great. You pick the electric up, and we've already pre-made that tone. Obviously, she's playing that microphone in front of a microphone. You're going to hear a bit of the actual strings because she's playing it directly in front of a condenser. It's going to pick up a bit of the actual, her string actually hitting the strings. But we tried to balance that with the, blend the actual tone to make up for it. I think that's the point. It's where you'll start going, how would I treat this as on a studio level than just this is live. But live we can get away with a lot of things. It's there's a lot of things you can kind of just go, okay, well it's live. We can just put the mic there for now.
So Emma, you're about to kick off a virtual tour, and my question for both of you is that kind of what you're doing? This is going to be you have a new single that just came out. You have kind of a new sound that you guys are sort of massaging and getting. It's a little more pop, right? Is that fair? Like kind of like right center, right in the middle pop. Very, very. I'll let you guys describe it. But from the standpoint of the shows that you're going to be kicking off, literally in about an hour, you guys need to follow these shows. Tell us a little bit about how they're going to sound different than your normal shows, without any spoilers.
So yeah, so obviously my usual live streams, it's usually me and just an acoustic guitar, so the audience are really used to that stripped raw feel. But the music I put out is it's a more produced pop sound. Myself and James, our passion is to write pop, and that's what we've always kind of done. So it's always been about, in a live sense, whether it be a virtual show or on stage, kind of replicating that live the pop sound, but in a live atmosphere. So that's what you can expect. I mean, if you've heard my music, and especially the latest single, the virtual show is me performing more in the kind of pop realm of things. So bringing that full produced, fun pop sounds, but also a little bit of a guitar as well.
Fantastic. And same hair color though, right?
Oh yeah.
Well, you're getting a lot of fans, and you've got your own emotes for the hair color. You've got just there's so many things about what you're doing that are creative and I think really super fascinating. So I appreciate you letting us kind of nerd out a little bit on what you guys are doing. If you guys, we're going to post, Tori, can you post some information about, oh, you already did, thank you. So Emma, talk about the virtual tour, how it works, how tickets work, how long it's going for.
Sure. So the virtual tour is happening between now and June 3rd, and you can access all of those live streams through my website, emmamcgann.com. You can pick up a virtual tour pass, which gives you access to every single live stream across that kind of schedule of dates. And you also get additional perks as well. We've partnered up with a wonderful not-for-profit called One Tree Planted, whose mission is reforestation, which is really important to me. So every single purchase of a virtual tour pass also plants a tree. Also, fans get their name on my guitar case and lots of other fun perks. The virtual tour was actually originally supposed to run in line with a physical tour that was supposed to happen this week over in the States. Of course, things have changed. So we're still going ahead with those virtual dates, and that's exactly where you can find us. So from now through to June 3rd, and that will be on emmamcgann.com.
So one ticket gets you access to all of the dates. You can watch them indefinitely, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And your first one starts in, I think, like an hour or two.
That's right, in an hour or two.
So we're going to let you get prepared and get some water, and we, I'm very, very grateful that you guys could take some time before your show kicks off. And again, for anyone watching now or in the future, this is the act to watch if you want to understand live streaming. They're doing so many things correctly, and we were just trying to unpack sort of more the technical side and some of the upcoming live streams we do. We're going to talk about, the engagement aspect, which is really the heart and soul of it. From our conversation before, right, Emma? And collaborating with other artists, which is a big thing, and then some of the money aspect, which is a completely different animal than touring, than a studio record, than a meet and greet, or whatever it is that's kind of the standard stuff that's happening in the industry right now. It's really a very different thing. So thank you guys for your time and all your creative energy that you've put into this over years and years, kind of working on this craft.
So good. Happy to help. Happy to help.
Okay, so we'll see you in a couple of days. Our next few are going to be Wednesdays and Fridays. They're going to be at the same time, 10 o'clock Pacific a.m., 1 o'clock Eastern, and 6 o'clock UK. So we'll see you on Wednesdays and Fridays at 10 a.m. Pacific. Thanks again for joining in. Thank you for your questions, and we'll do these again soon. Thank you very much, guys. Have a wonderful show. We'll see you there.
Thanks. Take care. See you soon.